Good evening, everyone. That's right. It's another First Friday. And tonight we have something truly special for you. Bev Iverson, one of the members of our committee, knows our guest presenter this evening, Jessie Cool. I mean, what a fantastic name, let alone all the other things that she does, but to be introduced as Cool. Oh, if only I could have had that name in high school. So she is an amazing entrepreneur and restaurateur, chef. Her amazing ability to bring farm to the table long before it was hip and, no pun intended, cool. She helped create this movement where organic farming, finding local farmers, local wineries to enjoy at the table in many fine restaurants. She opened Flea St in 1982, and it continues today. And her conversation with Bev, it takes place in her garden as well as in the restaurant. Now, Doris Day once said that food for the body is not enough. There must be food for the soul. And when it comes to food for the soul, no one does it better than Jessie Cool. So with that, here is Bev and Jessie enjoying a conversation just for you.
I'd like to welcome our first Friday guest. I'm Bev Iverson, a member of the Woodside Arts and Culture Committee, and I have the pleasure of talking with my friend and esteemed chef, Jessie Cool. Jessie is known to many of you as the founder of Menlo Park's Flea St Cafe. She's a leader in the sustainable organic food movement. She's a proud mother of two lovely boys, and an avid hiker and an activist with the food industry. Welcome, Jessie.
Thanks.
So I have a couple of questions for you. I'd like to start at the beginning. I know that you grew up in a small coal mining town in Western Pennsylvania. Can you tell me a little bit about your family's relationship to food and maybe a favorite memory of food as a girl?
I was born into a Jewish Italian family, which means one has no choice but to end up somehow in the midst of cooking and feeding others and gardening, actually. So my background, my father had a grocery store in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. We grew our own food. My uncle had the slaughterhouse. So we basically knew where all our food came from. It was organic. We didn't necessarily use the word organic, but it was. And so for me, those were deep roots of how to live within community and family and to nourish myself, others, and again, anyone around me. I did my best to get away from it because when you are a part of a food family, it actually presents both wonderful elements and also there's dysfunction that is very attached to food. So my goal was to get as far away as possible, and I ended up in the food industry after I became a person on welfare during a very difficult time in my life, a single parent, cooked my way through everything. And did you ask me
Yes.
how I got to California?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Tell me a memory of a favorite food.
Favorite food. Well, I actually started out not liking food, which is probably impossible for anyone to imagine. But once I did, I had a very eclectic. I like savory more than sweets. I wasn't a baker. I didn't like to bake cookies. I wasn't that person in the kitchen who was making chocolate chip cookies to make everybody happy. I was making chipped ham sandwiches and little savory.
Well, I want to go back to that question because you once told me about your dad's donuts. So I just wanted to hear if there were favorite foods growing up in your family.
I think you really want one of my
I
dad's
do.
donuts. That's what it is. And I can make that happen. We're actually making fried biscuits at Flea Street and tossing them in cinnamon sugar. So they're like donuts because they are a deep part of my memory. So my dad also had a bakery and he actually named it after me. And I started working in his grocery store. Again, where does the food roots come from? They're very deep in there at the age of 12. Because it was the way to get near my dad because he was working all the time, which is probably why how I learned to work a
All the time.
lot. But my dad made true homemade raised glazed donuts. And so when I worked in the bakery, because I did come from a family that had struggles with how much we ate, I would put a donut on the top of the shelf because I knew if I started eating them, I would eat like my brothers did, 6. So I would put a glazed donut on the top of the shelf and I'd work all day and know that it was waiting for me. So it's always been a treat. And I've learned that about food, that I really savor and hold on to anything that I love as a treat. And I don't actually like to eat what I don't want to eat, but I really like to eat what I like to eat.
Yum. All right, let's go a little bit further. How can you tell us why you came to California?
Well, I had we always mentioned you can cut this all off, but we already mentioned being on welfare.
Yeah.
That's already done. Okay. So I met somebody when I was hitchhiking who happened to be from Palo Alto, California, and went back to Philadelphia to finish my education and get my degree in language and religion. Again, trying to stay away from food. And he came back to California, sent me a message. I was not in a relationship with him. Sent me a message and said, you know, I'm going to come and get you. I think you belong in California. So he drove a 67 Volkswagen van from Palo Alto to Philadelphia and picked me and my 5-year-old son up. And we drove a van cross country, cooked our way the whole way, and I ended up in Palo Alto.
And then did your parents follow?
Yes, because I belong in California. I belong in this community. It was the first time in my life coming from Western Pennsylvania. I actually felt a diversity, a different way of relating, maybe my own quirkiness. We all have quirkiness in us, to the community and feeling accepted. And there's such brilliance here on so many different levels that it was exciting. And my parents heard about it. So at the age of 60, they gave it all up and they packed up their life. Well, they were born and raised in Western Pennsylvania, coal mining towns, and they followed me here. And they opened late for, no, they didn't open late for the train. We had already had late for the train, but they opened Flea Street with me, which why you see the picture of my mom and dad kissing on the park bench when you walk into Flea Street. It's much better than reviews or any kind of accolades. It's June and Eddie kissing on the park bench.
I love those pictures.
Yeah.
Jesse, tell us how you became connected to the organic and sustainable food movement.
When I started in the restaurant business or cooking as a profession, something deep inside me, because of my roots to my family and community and experience what my family did with food that had integrity, which meant that we only ate or fed others with food that had nothing artificial in it. It's a very old world. So my roots come from not pioneering, because I've never thought of it that way. I think of it more of very, very grounded, globally, universally right, that food has not always been tainted with something artificial. So the word organic was what was the label for the food I was brought up on. And when I became a professional, in my gut, I knew that I could not do anything other than feed people with honest integrity. So it wasn't really organic at first. It was more a hippie thing. It was about no chemicals or additives or anything artificial in the food. And that, of course, naturally uh, spilled over to all these words that we use now, like sustainable and farm to table, and all those words did not exist. Even organic wasn't used that much. In the 70s at Late for the Train, we couldn't use the word organic because everybody thought it was going to be terrible, hippy dippy, crunchy granola, terrible tasting
Terrible
food.
food.
And yet that's not what it was. So I brought forward what my family lived and what I was taught. And then in this community, what I felt was my, I guess my job to do in feeding others, because that's what I do. I feed others.
Were you, were your purveyors calling it sustainable and organic?
No, there were no words
So
like
they
that at
were
all.
just clean food.
No, actually, that wasn't, the only word was organic. And it was very hard to find. We didn't even use local because back then, and that's not that long ago, it's about 45 years now, but there was no local meat. There was no meat on Late for the Train menu because I couldn't find local meat because they shipped it all elsewhere. This happens in agricultural communities. They often send the food elsewhere. And so back then, the word organic was beginning to be used, but it was very hard to find it.
Can you tell us, this is a big one.
Oh, I don't like the look on your
I know.
face.
Well, it's just, it's encompassing.
This is the
I
fun
know.
part.
Can you
You
tell
know
us
too
about
much.
your commitment to social responsibility?
Well, from the beginning, I was taught by my dad because my dad started the grocery store in an area of our hometown that had hills, and on each of the hills were blue collar Polish, Italians, Jews. So my dad's store was in the midst of people who were very genuine, real, but not often of great resource. They were steel mill workers and coal miners and farmers. And my father recognized that, and he fed them. If somebody he knew put something under their shirt because they didn't have enough money for their family, he ignored it. We baked bread and did a bread drive every year where we sold bread and gave all the money away. And my father, I'm very proud to say, was the first person who hired someone of color as a manager in our hometown, which led to, you've sat at my bar, behind the bar, there's a picture of Louis Armstrong, because my dad was buddies with Louis Armstrong, because when he came to town to play music and couldn't get a hotel room, my father, who was a councilman, elbowed and said, absolutely not. You give him a room. So for me now in the food industry, and I am a blue collar worker, and I employ and work with the people of service who are paid sometimes the very least and yet have the greatest expectations. So I've had to really learn what that means to be fair and kind to those people too. And COVID taught more than anything, because the people who showed up and took care of us who are privileged in shelter were the people who, the word justice, who need the deepest amount of care, who are smart, who are beautiful, who are as talented, who are as kind, who are the best family people, who work the hardest. I thought I understood justice, but COVID really hit home. And now the way I feel about my staff is they are beloved to me, and I feel like I would do anything for them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and that leads us into, can you tell us about some of your staff members and your staff?
So we've throughout COVID, for this past 2 years now, we kept our whole kitchen employed. We lost no one. And Francisco's been with us 26 years. Erica, 15 years. Romaldo, 17 years. Eloy, who everyone knows, is going on 14 years. So we have Edgar, Laura, 7 years. We have a very solid crew. And then a lot of people we know left this community because there is nowhere for them to live. And a big issue of keeping our staff, and I'll go back to my staff, but is an awareness that those who take care of us, those who are us of service, are really struggling even more than before COVID to figure out where they can live at low pay. So I have a venerable staff, but then I have working with me is this fabulous new chef who's been with us 3 years, named Brian Turk. And then he brought his sister on. If you come to the door, you're going to meet Andrea, who is Brian's sister, Andrea Turk. And the two of them have learned a whole new way of being in a restaurant, which is there's a lot of deep care and respect, especially for the Latino community, both men and women. We have a lot of women in the kitchen too, because often women are amongst the best cooks. So my staff to me are anyone in business would say that I hope who are trying to be good business people, that their staff are really the most important part of the business. And you and I had a brief conversation about what, we think about Flea Street or any of my restaurants about food first. We think about food and service because those are what we experience. Yet we started something called Heart of the House during COVID, which means that when you come to the restaurant, if you leave, well, we charge a 20% service charge on both to go and in-house dining because the people are still working to prepare your food. What I think the most important awareness in the food industry is that about people, that from whoever grows, fishes, or ranches our food to whoever harvests the food, really the food business, though people think it's about food and service because that's what you experience, what's on the table and who's in front of you. But what's important to us is to really honor and pay attention to people from beginning to end, who grows the food, who takes care of the soil, who harvests the food, which is, fishermen and ranchers and gardeners and vegetable growers and fruit growers, all the way to then who delivers it to the restaurants, and then who cleans it and cooks it, and then who serves it. It's people all the way along. And because we don't have as many people right here, part of what we did was start something called Heart of the House. Again, COVID had many silver linings. Before, when you left a tip on the table, it only went to the server. Now we have Heart of the House. When you get your 20% service charge, and we do charge that on to go, and we also charge that on table service, because no matter what, there are people working really hard to do what they can to let you have a wonderful meal that you don't cook at home. That 20% is shared now from the dishwasher all the way to the bartender. And that has created another whole heart space in our restaurant that's different. They really care about each other. And that means then they care about the guest, which is another core value that we have called the customer comes last. And people have confronted me on that and said, well, that's arrogant. I consider the customer coming last being a message of what's most important is if we take care of everyone from the beginning to the end, feed them well, pay them as well as possible in the lowest income place to work. One of them is the food industry. If we take care of all of them, then you're going to feel really nurtured and cared for. And that's something I hope that people do feel in our restaurants, that the people truly care.
Lovely.
Well, we try. It's never perfect. And, there are lots of people after 46 years in the restaurant business who who I'd like to say I'm sorry to, because I had to learn how to do what I'm doing, and I've made many mistakes like all of us, or who might have had a bad meal, which all of you had a bad meal. I truly apologize because it was not our intent ever. Just like at home when you blow it sometimes, it happens. We don't want that to happen. But I think what's important for us is that we keep discovering our perfect imperfections, what we can fix and do better, and really care about each other. And after a moment of being very burned out at Flea Street, I have to confess that there was a time some of you saw me in a baseball cap, drinking a martini, back at the back. I was tired and burned out. Now that we've brought justice back into it, now that we care for really consciously all of us, from the food from the beginning to end, I am so excited again and enlivened about the messages food can bring to the public about equality, kindness, really honoring anyone who takes care of you, are make me really happy. It's a part of being in a really healthy community.
That is a great transition for my next question, because we are sitting in front of your backyard garden, and I know that you have the Riker Center that comes and helps with this garden, and we thought we might go back there and look at what's going on, and you could tell us, maybe you tell us now about your connection, and then we'll go out there.
Well, part of the beauty of being in community, and we talked about this too, is what's the difference between between the artistic side of me and the business side of me. And the business side of me was very, very hard to learn. I was actually pretty bad. Most of the years in my career, I lost money. And I was told I was like, ran businesses like a lemonade stand. The money would come in, but I have no clue. I was a hippie girl who came from a food family that had a garden and suddenly was running a restaurant with my former husband, Bob Poole. But what I really got from that was that though business was hard, the art of it and the beauty of it and the people part of it excited me. So I did learn how to use QuickBooks. I did have to learn how to garden myself, though I have garden fairies from the Riker Center who really take care of this. And because food is connected to where it comes from, we compost all our green matter every Sunday. 2 or 3 of the Rikes guys, especially Isaac, who's been doing it for 2 years now. Chicken. I hear a chicken. We have chickens back. They come every Sunday. They go to Flea Street and pick up 8 to 12 buckets of green matter. They come to the garden, we'll look at the compost, and they build soil. We then grow food. That's good background. We grow food and then we use it again in the restaurant. So what this garden has really taught was deep connection. And Gary Rikers became a very dear person to me, because he loved the garden and he knew that it was a place for people to learn about their own perfect imperfections, to also get down to distill to a very simple part of life that everyone all over the world does. We eat, we grow food, and it's very healing and nurturing. I have 6 chickens. So the connection to the Riker Center has been that we are going to keep building more and more curriculum here, but then we're hoping that stretches throughout the community. And the Riker Center is a very big part of many of the families, especially in the Menlo Park, Atherton, Woodside community, that has really done a lot to help people focus on their talents and their well-being. And so it seemed natural because Gary loved Flea Street. Gary would eat at Flea Street a lot. And through COVID, I would cook for myself and I would also cook for Gary. They would pick up food for him. I would harvest from the garden, I'd cook, and then they'd come take it to Gary. So in his honor, because a few weeks before he left us, we were talking about the garden project. We're going to keep the collaboration. It's good. It's actually another really exciting. It makes us all happy when we're here, because everybody, even if it's awkward, even the people who don't like bugs are like, something seems to transform when they're next to the flavors, the colors, the beauty, the artistry, the simplicity of growing food and tasting it. It also brings alive all the senses. You hear, you touch, you smell, you taste. And as an artist,
Yes,
this is just dreamy, I would think.
I remember stories of you telling me that the kids would come over and they've never worked in a garden, and they may not have liked what they did during the day, but you fed them, and that changed their minds because they could taste the food and where it came from. And
Well, I would say, have you all tasted a cherry tomato? I don't like tomatoes. Well, could you just close your eyes and maybe give it a chance? And then they began trusting me. I said, I will never give you something that is terrible. Maybe it'll taste different here. Or they would be harvesting and I'd run in the house and make a little something and bring it out for them to taste. And it was just, again, that's what the Rice is about. I think it really invites people to go to their natural limits or their innate ways of doing things and not being afraid to be real. And a garden is so real. And some of those things are so foreign. And, sometimes for people to get dirty in our sanitized world and think that it's not okay is so, again, globally rich that they begin to understand soil. And little by little, it can hopefully plant seeds. And we are going to do a cooking class. That's part of the Rice. We're going to do a very simple class, but we're hoping we can plant seeds of good health, but also of creativity, of beauty. The chickens are going at it. I think they're laying an egg.
we have some neighbors coming through too.
And well, this is a running path. And so this is a place where the community can also experience it.
Let's go walk back there.
Okay, sounds great.
Let's go into the garden.
So all of these fences are made from recycled tree limbs. And this is the Rice Cool Garden. It used to be a Stanford learning garden because this is all Stanford open space. 25 years ago, a wonderful man named Jeff Wachtel, who was the assistant to President Hennessy, came over because people complained about the chickens. It wasn't trendy back then. And they actually granted this garden on open space 100 years of life. We can be here pretty much my whole life. And I taught at Stanford a similar class that we'll be teaching with the Rice Center on a 1-pot, 7-ingredient, no recipe. Pull it from the garden, use olive oil, vinegar, salt, pepper, sugar, herbs and spices, and you can prepare anything. So it's a way of teaching people how to really cook, not to use recipes, but connect to whatever's growing, or to a piece of, to chicken or meat, and with fat, salt, sugar, herbs, spices. They learn about nutrition too, because we do use those ingredients in cooking. And by pulling the best from the garden, you get the optimum. You know this because you have a garden and you go to the market. You get the optimum flavor. So you do sometimes need to adjust it, which is real cooking. And this beautiful garden inspires people who are afraid of cooking to then consider really cooking and preparing food. How about the chickens? Since they were like serenading you,
Let's see the chicken.
let's go feed them and let's gather some eggs. This is the favorite part of the garden, I think. And the reason we were granted the use of this space is because people didn't used to have chickens. They're trendy now. And because I have chicken coop that the neighbors come complained about. Stanford thought it was awesome that there was food being grown right here in the middle of Palo Alto for people to walk by and see. So we're gonna be here for a long time, and the chickens are waiting for you because you have treat.
Just spray it out?
Yeah, just throw it out like fast. Dump it. Oh no, you can go.
Oh, all of it.
You can just dump it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Perfect.
There you go, girl.
During COVID, I think you should gather a few eggs. So you can,
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Iverson.
They're in here.
How about gathering some eggs? This is the kids' favorite thing to do. So this is a chicken coop made from cob, which is just straw and mud. And then once again, we used all recycled tree limbs to build their roost. So anyone who comes in the garden kind of gets a real sense of deep connection to that which is real. We talked earlier about getting a big sign that says, "Perfect imperfection, get real."
These are warm.
Yeah, that means that's what the noise
That's
is
what
about.
we heard earlier.
Ms. Iverson, you're doing a good job gathering eggs.
Thank you, Jessie. I know we want to see the compost pile too. Look how pretty your colors are.
So these are aracondas, and they lay green eggs. It's beautiful. Not what they're eating. I have a lock on this because during COVID, somebody came by and asked if they could buy my chickens.
No.
So these are all over the food at Flea St. Okay, cameraman, you gotta taste the blossom. Come on. Come on.
You just eat the whole leaf?
Yeah.
You eat the whole thing. Does it taste like a bean? A pea?
Mm-hmm.
A fava bean?
Mm-hmm.
Do you eat fava beans?
I've had them.
Delish.
Starts out sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Pea blossoms are the best.
Yeah, I
I'll
love
taste this too.
Wow. Delicious.
It is delicious. Those are going to be sweet.
Okay, so the best, one of the best blossoms in the garden are the pea blossoms. Taste
Okay.
one of those. Beth? Sweet.
Mm.
Sugar snap pea.
So sweet. But I think the broccoli.
Yeah,
the
broccoli was
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
At Flea Street, we've always had taste of the season. It's our amuse bouche. A lot of restaurants do this. They'll give you a little sip of something or a little puff of something. We give you something coming from a local garden or our own gardens. We've always done that because we want you to taste something real that is really fresh. And oh my goodness, like, wow, broccoli really tastes like that, or that tomato tastes like that. Something very simple. And when, so Taste the Season now comes from the Ricus Cool Garden. This is a different kind of broccoli. It's one that keeps shooting, just
So sweet.
It's sweet. See, that's what someone would say rather than, oh, it just tastes like broccoli. It's so sweet. So all of this will go for Taste of the Season at Flea Street. And the chickens lay eggs. When we have enough eggs, that's on Taste the Season. Around the corner there are beehives. We have our own honey. We harvest honey. And I have all the suits. The Ricus used to be Stanford students, but now it'll be Ricus students, and my staff come and they learn about bees and honey. So right here in the middle of Palo Alto on Stanford Open Space, we have this beautiful garden that people get to look at and share and actually see food being grown. But the real beginning to a garden is what we talked about, compost. And what we love about about the whole connection to food really is that it starts with the soil. If you don't have good soil, you get bugs and the plants don't grow well. And truly, good compost is natural miracle grow. Miracle Grow's chemicals. This is Miracle Grow. It's compost. So every Sunday, they pick up 8 to 12 buckets, park their car back there. Isaac leads it, Isaac and Daniel and Gavin from the Riker Center, and they begin making the soil. So under there, it's probably incredibly steamy, and look at that, steamy and hot and buggy. That's what it's supposed to be. Making soil, compost the garden, creates beautiful food that we then take back to Flea Street. So it's another place of learning the cycle of life. And the cycle of life is truly starting from the water and the soil and the air in which we live, and then figuring out a way to be connected to all of that. I happen to have made a business from it because I have restaurants, but back to the people, to keep the people truly connected to what that all means, gives us all great meaning and a lot of love and a lot of connection to our communities, both local, national, well, not both, local, and it gives us a lot of connection to community, local, national, and global, because we get to really learn about where food comes from and all the people who grow it. So
It's a big circle, Jack.
it's a big circle.
Going into Flea Street.
Everybody wants to get into the kitchen, so we're going to go back there and give you a glimpse behind the scenes. My staff has been with me 27, 15, 13, 7 years. They're very much a part of the family here. I'm taking my mask off because it's a little bit safer, but come back and go behind the scenes. So this is the heart and soul of the kitchen. Edgar, Laura, Francisco, and this kitchen was built in 1980, but it has had a few different changes. And then there's Brian, who you saw us before, who is working closely with me and making my life really easy because he's running this restaurant. So this is truly the heart and soul of the kitchen. This is the dish pit, but something that I'm comfortable with is this place is immaculate. They are so good at keeping it clean. This is an extern from the San Francisco Cooking School who is coming and learning about how to cook at Flea Street. This is the pantry. So this is where all the desserts and the appetizers come from. That oven in the back, the Blodgett, has been here since we opened in 1980. We don't use a convection oven. We actually use an old-fashioned pizza oven, which we think has higher heat, is more intense, and makes the biscuits, which all of you love to eat, I think, makes the biscuits perfect. So we still do things in this kitchen in a very old-fashioned way. One of the beautiful things about Flea Street is we've had so many amazing people come into our kitchens and also participate in service. But about 3 years ago, right before the pandemic hit, about the hardest time Flea Street's been through, though it's been through many ups and downs, Brian Turks started working with us. And at the time, how old were you, Brian? Brian was 21, and people could not believe that I was hiring somebody who was 21 yet. It's one of the best choices I've ever made. And I'd love you to just spend a minute or so talking about how you as a young person came into a restaurant that's 41 years old, and what made you want to stay.
It's just ever growing and changing. There's so much to be learned, to learn here, and you offer so much knowledge of the past and how sustainability is super important in the ways of how the world needs to progress, because if we don't move this direction, we're all kind of screwed. You know, the world just gets worse and worse, and people don't take these steps and don't actually think about the effects of overfishing stuff, how things come from the land, how we're feeding our bodies, how we're feeding our customers. Like, putting the good stuff into us is super important, because without it, it's just going to be bad for us and everything sucks, honestly.
So this is a highly unusual thing for a chef to say, quite honestly, because that tells me you really care about this community. It's not just about local. You didn't start with our local, organic. You didn't start with what most people think. You started with really deeply caring about not only what we eat, but also about what we feed people ourselves. So I love working.
I do too. It's been an amazing 3 years of this growth and intensity of figuring out how to maneuver with the world pretty much feeling like it's going to end, and every day is uncertain of what we can do, what we can't do, and how everything has to adjust constantly and be on a pivot without just being stuck in one lane and going down. We have to be able to move around and adjust always.
You're talking about the pandemic, but how do I tell you this? That's the Russian business.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a little bit more secure, but things can change. The interesting thing for you is when you started, Flea Street was, 39 years. We kind of had some idea what to do. We were finally making money. I owed nothing. We were out of debt, and then boom, one of the biggest ones hit us. But you were able to adapt, and I think that is a part of this business. But something else that was important is he, as a young person, had to come into a venerable staff, and he had to walk on iron and nails and fire. And now, how's your team?
It's great. I mean, I feel like the whole place is in a stable position to where if something was to happen, like I get COVID or anything, I forbid that ever happened, but they are so adapted and in line with my goals of the restaurant as well as Jesse's, to where we both can kind of be out here for an evening and make it's not going to go up in flames anymore. Like, they're going to know what they're doing and they're fully trained behind everything now.
So I'm going to ask another question. That's okay with you. Brian, after going through this time, this moment in time, we have always had change and we get excited about what we're doing. It's not always comfortable as we do. What do you see in the future of Flea Street? You're a part of a restaurant that still has an 8-year lease and maybe longer, and here you are.
I mean, it's ever growing and changing. There's so much potential that can still come out of this place. Like, even after 41 years, you wouldn't think places burn out, they get tired, there's no inspiration left. But with Jesse, there's so much inspiration to keep growing and adapting and fix the community and fix how people think about everything, not just the way we're eating and growing stuff, but like to really think the deeper roots of how it's coming to us, the hard work of small farmers versus big corporations, like the amount of labor and generations of families that went into keeping the business organic, sustainable, and all that work all stems into together, really rooted into years and years of focus and hard work that should be rewarded.
And that's food and wine, spirits.
Yeah.
Cheers, Brian. Here's to the future, Brian. Eloy, you are a well-known face here. I've been here 41 years, but you've been here
14 years.
and you have taken care and made many people happy at this bar. What's the secret of your cocktails?
So I think we make fresh ingredients, we use fresh lime and fresh fruit, seasonal, and not too sweet.
That's the big one.
Yeah, not too sweet, so people they don't have too cool. Yeah. They try to do, fresh and very simple, fresh and not too, simple ingredients. Yeah.
It's like our food. You make sure that when you make cocktails, people taste everything.
Exactly.
And you work really hard at that. And this bar is blessed by my father who opened this restaurant with me in 1980 because
Jack Daniels.
So my
Yeah.
my dad was friends with Satchmo, and so that's Eddie and Satchmo. Eddie is the one who was the first baker and made those biscuits that you all love and we all enjoy baking by hand for you. But below Eddie and Satchmo, there's a bottle of Jack Daniels, so they're blessing the restaurant and the bar. Thank you, Eloy, for all you
Thank you.
do.
Thank you, Jess, for having me here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So here we are at Flea Street, and we have another question for you, Jesse. One of the things that we wanted to talk about is if someone wants to get into the restaurant business, what kind of advice would you have for them?
No. That's not entirely true, but so I've done this for 46 years now, and it feels like within the past 10 years I finally figured out how to do it. And it took a very long time to make money because I really was not a businesswoman. I was a cook and a hippie girl. You know, I was wanting to feed the community and connect with farmers and know where my food came from, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I would really encourage anyone going into the business, if they're not going into a formula business or with strong support or investors, though I never had investors. No, I had investors once. I would say that you really have to feel you're passionate about food and drink and really, really love it. Because if you don't, then it's exhausting. It's long hours. At the beginning, it's very little pay. You don't make money. And even when you do start making money, our profit margins, you know, we're lucky at 5% at the bottom line. So it's something that it's like the arts. You understand this.
Yeah.
And it's like theater. It's not as though you go into it to make money, though it may seem like it to others. You want to really love what you do. And I think be someone who respects the people who work for you. We certainly want to take care of our guests. That's the front part of it. That's the curtain going up. And that is what the community feels, and that has to work for them. But what's been most important to me are these people who are the backbone, taking care of everything, and they really do take care of everything. I'd also say go work in a restaurant first. Don't just dive in because you're a good cook or because you love people, because you love hospitality or throwing dinner parties or someone's investing in you. Go chop onions for hours or go make the same dish over and over again and go realize what it's really like to work in a restaurant because before you change your life in a restaurant. Now, that's not how I did it, but
That's what's good for.
and some people go to school, but many of us feel the best way to learn the business, or even if you want to go to school, is go be in a restaurant for 6 months or 3 months at the least. And you'll know.
You'll know. Perfect, thank you. So this concludes our conversation together, and all of us, First Friday, loved having this time with you. We have maybe some pictures of the restaurant that will follow, but thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you and Michael for being a very close part of my community from 40 years ago, because we were only buying local California wines, much to the discomfort of this community, because everybody was drinking French wines. And our commitment from the beginning was within our neighborhood, staying close to our friends and neighbors, buying as much ingredient, buying the wines. And while it was hard then, I think this community has grown up with the restaurant too, and appreciates that we have some of the best wines right here, and we live in farmland. So thank you for being my friend and buddy and a part of the whole thing from the beginning.
Means a lot.
Wow. What an amazing story from an amazing person, an amazing entrepreneur, chef, cookbook author, just amazing. So thank you, Bev, for bringing Jessie Cool to our audience. That was fantastic. You know, everyone enjoys a good meal. Everyone has their own preferences and how they like to eat. Maybe it's an Asian cuisine or something Latin or Mexican or Italian or French, or maybe something as simple as a good old burger and fries. Mark Twain perhaps said it best that part of the secret of a successful life is to eat what you like and let the food fight it out on the inside. A little bit of humor there from Mr. Twain, but considering how important bringing food to the world and making it available to everyone, I'm going to end this portion with Jessie by quoting Euripides, who said that when a man's stomach is full, it makes no difference whether he is rich or poor. And that's definitely what Jessie Cool is all about, making sure that no matter if you are rich or poor, you have quality food in your life. Now, next month, we change our routine from music and food to photography with Robert Middleman, who will be coming to present some of his latest photography. Robert has been with us once before in a live environment at Independence Hall, which, by the way, we are working towards making that possible. So stay tuned for further information. So as always, I wish you well, stay safe, and please take care of each other. With that, see you next month. Bye-bye.